Hello and welcome. My name is Brian McAvoy.
And I'm Tim Shank. This is
Two Cyborgs and a Microphone.
Well, today I'm coming down with a cold, so my voice sounds like a raging garbage fire. Anyway, what are you drinking today, Tim?
Well, I have a stiff cup of joe and my two cyborgs and a microphone coffee cup. What are you drinking?
Well, I'm still stuck in Reno, so I'm drinking out of a Starbucks cup.
Coffee, though.
Absolutely. It is, morning. I'm awake. It's a weekend, so I need some coffee to get going. Coffee is so commonplace nowadays that we don't really think of it as a hack. It's just part of our lives, or in some of our cases, it's an entire way of life.
So we're using this episode to talk about some of the possibly oldest biohacks, which have maybe been so pervasive that they seem commonplace or completely normal in our lives now. And coffee is one of those.
Definitely. It's one of those things that's crept in, just become the norm, even though it started off as something kind of unusual, but then it became accepted.
We may not think of the cognitive enhancement piece of coffee, and we think it wakes us up. It might, I don't know if most people consider that it is a cognitive enhancement rather than just a beverage that we use to wake up.
Yeah, well, some people, it's a necessity, and it's a drug in the same way that any of the nootropics we've talked about are drugs.
I mean, it is a stimulant.
Again, that word should not be scary.
No, not at all. And it is a stimulant. Caffeine is a well-known stimulant, has addictive properties, but we still use it all the time.
And we give it away for free at workplaces.
That's an interesting point.
We've talked about that before.
And there's a reason that they've done that, is they know that it increases productivity.
Oh, yeah. It's a small investment on the employer's part to put out free coffee.
Keeps everybody on the ball all day long.
Feeds their addiction. Otherwise, they'd have dangerous coffee makers at their workstations.
I would.
Oh, goodness, yes. In fact, I worked at one place where the manager was so sick of there being no coffee nearby, he brought in his own Keurig and said, go ahead and use it. I'll supply coffee to you guys. And that was just a courtesy to us, not so much I need you guys to work harder. He was just a good manager.
Or that's what he let you think.
He was a good guy. I miss him. So coffee definitely originated in the Ethiopia and Yemen area. There's a bunch of various reports out there which disagree about when and where exactly, but it's definitely from that region. One story goes as far back as the 9th century, so 800 in the Common Era. Most of them don't start until about the 15th century. Many of the stories involved holy men discovering or creating coffee beans and the drink of coffee. Holy men were typically the scholars of the time because they were the ones who had, the time and resources to do it, otherwise the very wealthy, so royalty. Bulletproof coffee lays claim that it's a biohack, which is significant because way back when this was being researched by holy and royalty, even the undomesticated version of coffee was so groundbreaking at the time that some people considered it heretical. Tim, what would you say its effect has been on society as a whole?
Well, it definitely lets us control our waking hours. I mean, that's what we mainly use it for, yeah. Right? Rather than having to deal with the brain fog that may have been maybe a natural thing when you first wake up, we're now able to control it. And if we want to stay up later, we can drink more coffee, and we know that stimulant effect is going to carry us through and help us perform better in times that we would normally not be performing at all.
Definitely.
Bulletproof coffee, he claims that it's specially chosen not to have mycotoxins, which are basically molds and fungus that supposedly are going to be in your coffee and cause health issues. I'm looking at Fast Company. It's a business magazine. It says it's BS. Actually, doesn't abbreviate that.
Tell me if I'm remembering this correctly, that bulletproof coffee was, a good coffee or whatever. But what made it significant was that you mixed it with some kind of free-range, all-organic, grass-fed butter. Is that something that was part of the bulletproof recipe?
Part of it is. It's MCT oil, which is medium chain triglycerides. I think it's a version of, it's not necessarily fish oil, but it's kind of the same thing as DHA or DEA, but a more refined and controlled way that you mix in with it. But one of the main claims of bulletproof coffee was it was specially chosen to avoid mycotoxins. What that really came out to be is there's a Portland roasting coffee that you can go just buy the same thing, and it looks like that he basically said he went and specifically chose this coffee for the lack of mycotoxins, but he went down and he just bought it from the corner store.
Okay, so bulletproof is not necessarily the pinnacle of what can be expected from excellent coffee.
No, it's a good coffee. It's bought from a coffee house that roasts coffee right there in house, it sounds like. But I think this points to something that I think we all should be considering with this is, are we being scammed? I mean, that bulletproof coffee is like $14 or $15 a pound.
Dang.
For something that you can go get around the corner at, I'll tell you, Portland Roastings Coffee. That's very well maybe the same thing.
Okay.
So I think that's one thing we got to be careful of is the claims with all of this, because this is just one example of somebody taking advantage of consumers' desire to have something better, cleaner, and be more healthy. And it sure looks like this guy, and I'm not an authority, I'm just reading articles that are published in very legitimate magazines like Fast Company, and Gadget also had one that said that, no, it's Gizmodo that has one that's basically says the same thing, that the MCT oil is not all that special. It's not much different than just your DHA or DEA, and that this is just the same thing you could go get at the coffee shop at your place. So I just wanted to point that out. And we always hear about bulletproof and that he's big biohacker and stuff, but it really looks like he's just good at marketing and rebranding things.
All right, so caveat emptor.
But that doesn't mean that coffee is not effective as a biohack. I mean, it certainly is.
No, if anything, it's so easy to believe that this guy has found the next phase of the evolution of coffee, that he's done something groundbreaking and taken coffee to the next level, that people are willing to believe it. Whether or not it's true or whether or not it's just hype, it's still a legitimate biohack.
Yeah, I agree.
And people know it. People know of this, and they accept it and they accept it so thoroughly. And that's what's awesome, is it's a biohack. It legitimately is. It's a chemical that alters your mind, and people are okay with it.
Yeah. And in the workplace, they give it to you for free to make you more productive.
I'd be a hot mess right now if I weren't drinking coffee. Well, I sound like a hot mess. The other one I wanted to talk about that people just accept, that nobody bats an eye at, pun intended, is eyeglasses. They were invented in Pisa, Italy by a man named Friar Alessandro della Spina, probably in the late 13th century. He probably didn't actually invent them. There's a tome, The Ancient Chronicle of Dominican Monastery of St. Catherine in Pisa. It says, this is a translation of course, eyeglasses, having first been made by someone else who was unwilling to share them, he, meaning Spina, made them and shared them with everyone with a cheerful and willing heart. So what this says to me is that this monk was just a total hacker. He saw somebody with glasses and was like, hey man, that can help people. I think you should help people by sharing your idea. And the guy was like, nope. And so this guy just said, okay, fine. He reverse engineered it and gave it away. That's awesome to me. That he was a monk and was just like, oh, you're not willing to help people? Well,
yeah, that is.
Keep your secret. I'm giving it out for free.
Yeah, and see, that's the beauty of a lot of, and if you do it for free, you can break any patent. You can just look up and just point for point recreate a product that's out there. If you give it away for free, it's not illegal.
Oh yeah, there's lots of companies which refuse to file a patent for their invention because then everybody else is able to copy them and change it just enough. So a lot of the example I'm thinking of is fishing line. I used to work with somebody who was in the fishing line industry. They refused to patent some of their more advanced fishing lines because then they'd have to give away the recipe. And somebody else would be like, oh, you use 16 strands of, this certain fiber. Well, we use 24. That means that the Analog Act doesn't apply to us, and we can give away your line at a reduced cost.
I mean, if you're doing it for free, the only thing that patents matter for is if you're going to sell a product. Right. You can create and give away anything you want. So I actually look for those patents and things that I can recreate myself, and I've used those for myself.
Oh, definitely.
And there's nothing illegal about doing that. There's nothing illegal about doing that and using it for others, as long as you don't make any money off
right.
it.
What's the effect been of glasses on society? I mean, aside from a lot of them are fashionable, but most people wear them for a very specific purpose. And Tim, you wear glasses. I don't. What effect have you seen?
Oh man, when I started noticing my vision going on, it was night and day. All of a sudden I could be functional at night, because for a while I just kind of, when vision issues come on, especially, age related stuff, you don't really it happens so gradually that you don't really realize how degraded your sensor, your eyes are, how degraded your vision are. At one point, it came to the point where I couldn't read, I think it was my phone at the time, without having very bright light and without holding things a long distance from my face. When I put the eyeglasses on, I was back to normal, kind of. I mean, all of a sudden I could see again, and I could actually be functional in the evenings, which made a big difference.
Yeah, I bet you subconsciously didn't want to do as much at night because it was uncomfortable to not be able to see as well as you used to.
And I actually thought I was tireder than I really was, because I'm fuzzy vision, and I've just always that's means it's probably time to lay down and go to sleep.
I wish I could find a hack to make me do that.
At the end of the night, it was like I'd be winding down fairly early because I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't look at my computer screens, my phone, or whatever it was I was doing. It was like you say, it was uncomfortable. So I'd end up starting to call it a night, earlier and earlier in the night, because it just felt like I was tired. But once I put the glasses on and I realized, well, it's not that I'm tired. I'm not groggy. I just couldn't see. And it made a huge difference for me.
Absolutely. And, it appears on U.S. driver's license. If you need corrective eyewear to see properly and you're driving without them, that's breaking the law. That's the depth that these have gone to in our society. And they started off as a hack.
Yeah. Most people use eyeglasses to restore normal functionality. In some senses, eyeglasses are not an augmentation at all. But then you go to things like what jewelers wear.
Yep, they're loupes.
And things like that, using loupes, magnifying glasses, which is very close to the same thing. Not exactly, of course, but very close to the same. Now you are starting to get into a point where it becomes an augmentation, where you're wearing this device on your head that lets you see very detailed up-close images at high magnification. Not exactly glasses, but very similar, right?
Yeah, lens suspended in front of the eyes. Now, the only person I've seen wearing a jeweler's loupe out in public was Doug. And Doug's an odd case, but he's the only person I've seen wearing these in public. And I would be excited to hear about somebody who found a more adventurous use for glasses than just restoring normal vision. And of course, things like smart glasses, but that's really a head-mounted computer. But I'd be interested to see more people using standard glass lenses to augment their vision beyond normal human capability. That'd be awesome.
Well, I have jeweler's loupes that I use. Actually, they're in my workshop. If I need to, a lot of times when you're reading the printing on wire, for example, or something like that, or, very small type, or there's reasons to use that. And I have jeweler's loupes in my workshop that I use fairly often. They're not the glass, eyeglass style where you wear them, you kind of pinch them into your eye, but, similar.
Well, now I'm thinking about this, just my gears are just started churning. Like if I normally wore glasses, it would be so tempting to put a set of lenses, telescopic lenses, that would give me much longer range vision. Maybe just 2 or 3 times magnification, and not in the middle of my vision, like kind of up and to the right or something, so that when I tilted my head just right, I could see something further away. That'd be awesome. It'd be like bifocals for reading nearby things, but further away things.
That's a great idea.
Humans don't have that.
No.
Dang.
No, that's an excellent idea, and that's something you can't get. Grinding glass is not easy.
No.
To do for yourself, but I wonder if that's something we could do in our workshops.
I've heard of how people made the original lenses by just taking grit material and swirling planes of glass next to each other, but you can buy lenses online very inexpensively, but making them is difficult. Here's another one I just remembered. Our eyes were developed in the ocean through long stages of evolution, and we need to focus on something at a particular angle. Some birds, I think, like predator raptor birds, they don't need to refocus their eyes. They can see all levels in clarity all at the same time. So they can be focusing on a tree that they're coming up on and then instantly look down at the ground below it and see if there's any prey down there. Now, what I've heard is that there are films with very small holes that only let parallel light come through. When that happens, you don't need to refocus your eyes. You can just look at the phone in your hand and then look up and see somebody 20 feet away and not have to refocus your eyes because all the light is collimated.
Huh.
Well, maybe that's another hack to look into, is glasses that don't force you to refocus your eyes. Well, I have access to a laser engraver now, so maybe I'll give that a shot.
Something to try out. But I'd be interested to hear what our listeners or our YouTube subscribers have to say.
Yeah, I'd love to see some stuff in the comments about what people have done to biohack their own vision through mechanical, chemical processes.
I want to thank you all for listening. We invite you all to email us at cyborgs@twocyborgs.com. Get a hold of Brian specifically at brian@twocyborgs.com. Or you can send me an email at tim@twocyborgs.com.
And you can always find us and our shows at twocyborgs.com. Check out the store there. You can get the hooded sweatshirts, you can get the Cyborgs mugs, and so you can support our podcast and you can stay toasty warm or you can stay hydrated. This is Brian McAvoy, and I wish I was wearing one of those hoodies right now.
And this is Tim Shank. And I am drinking out of one of our coffee cups, but I'm not wearing my Two Cyborgs hoodie. You have been listening to Two Cyborgs and a Microphone, brought to you by two cyborgs who do have microphones.
Like, follow, share, +1, and don't forget to subscribe on any of the popular podcast services, including Google Play Music, iTunes, and Stitcher. Help us move up the podcast ladder by subscribing and commenting on iTunes, and tell us your ideas for vision or coffee biohacks.
And don't forget to hit us up on Twitter at 2cyborgs. That's the number 2 cyborgs.